My name is Samantha Hayes. I'm 29 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your life quietly begins to fall apart is that it doesn't feel like destruction when it starts. There's no explosion, no dramatic argument, no door slamming hard enough to shake the walls. Just a small decision. A simple yes. And a trust you don't realize you're about to regret. 3 days ago, I was sitting on my couch, phone in hand, listening to an insurance investigator ask me routine questions. And somewhere between what time did the accident occur and who was driving the vehicle, I realized my 2-year relationship hadn't ended with a fight. It ended with a GPS log. And a lie so casual, it almost sounded harmless. Let me explain. I've been dating Ryan Cole for just over 2 years. We didn't live together, but we were close enough that it felt like we did. He had his own apartment about 20 minutes from mine, but most weekends, he stayed over. His clothes were in my closet. His toothbrush sat next to mine like it belonged there. The relationship? It was fine. Not perfect. Not terrible. There were moments that made me pause, like how he'd casually bring up his ex-girlfriend Lena in conversations that didn't really need her name. Or how he'd cancel plans last minute with excuses that never quite lined up. But nothing that felt big enough to walk away from. At least, that's what I told myself. I drive a 2021 Honda Accord. It's not flashy, not the kind of car that turns heads. But it's mine. Paid off early, carefully maintained. The first major thing I ever bought that made me feel like I had my life together. So yeah, I'm protective of it. Ryan, on the other hand, drives an older Nissan Altima that's been slowly falling apart for months. At first, when he asked to borrow my car, it made sense. Job interviews. His car not reliable for highways. Quick trips to see his family. Reasonable things. And I said yes. Every time. Looking back now, I should have set boundaries. I see that clearly. But back then, it didn't feel like a big deal. It just felt like helping someone I loved. Last Saturday, he asked again. "Hey, can I take your car for a few errands?" he said, leaning against my kitchen counter like it was the most normal thing in the world. The Altima's making that weird noise again. I don't trust it. I hesitated for maybe half a second. Then I said, "Yeah, that's fine." Because I was working from home anyway. I didn't need it. Because I trusted him. Because saying no felt unnecessary. He told me he'd be back by early afternoon. By 6 p.m., he wasn't. No car. No Ryan. No update. I texted him. "Hey, where are you?" A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Running behind. Be back soon." Short. Casual. Like everything was normal. By 9 p.m., nothing had changed. I called. No answer. Texted again. Left on red. That was the moment something in my chest tightened. Just slightly. Not panic. Not yet. Just unease. By 11:47 p.m., my phone lit up again. And the message I saw made my stomach drop. "I crashed your car. Don't be mad. These things happen. I'm okay. The car's at a tow yard. I'll explain tomorrow. Love you." I stared at that text for a long time. Longer than I'd like to admit. Don't be mad. These things happen. A heart emoji. Like he'd spilled wine on my carpet. Not totaled something I'd worked years to afford. I typed back slowly. "Accidents happen. I'm glad you're okay. We'll figure it out tomorrow." The words looked calm. Supportive. Understanding. They weren't real. I didn't mean a single one of them. I was furious. But I've learned something about anger. It clouds everything. It turns conversations into battles instead of answers. And I wanted answers. Sunday morning, he came over. He looked exhausted, pale. There was a faint bruise along his collarbone, probably from the seatbelt. He avoided my eyes when I opened the door. That was the first thing I noticed. The second? How nervous he seemed. Too nervous for someone who had just been in an accident. I made coffee, sat him down, kept my voice steady. What happened? He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all night. I was running errands, he said, and a deer ran out in front of me. I swerved and hit a guardrail. His tone was practiced. Too smooth. The front end is pretty messed up, he added, but the tow guy said it might be fixable. I'm so sorry, Sam. I feel terrible. I nodded slowly. Where did it happen? On the highway. Which one? The main one, near the outlet mall. The outlet mall is 45 minutes from my place. He'd been gone for over 12 hours. I didn't push. Not yet. Okay, I said quietly. We'll file an insurance claim. Relief flooded his face so quickly it almost startled me. See, he said, forcing a smile. It'll all work out. I knew you'd understand. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time. The silence felt heavier than usual, like the walls knew something I didn't want to admit yet. And then I did something I had never done before, something I'd honestly forgotten I even could do. I opened the GPS tracking app connected to my car. I installed it months ago for an insurance discount. It logs everything. Location, speed, mileage, every trip. I tapped on Saturday's data and watched my entire relationship unravel in front of me. My car hadn't gone anywhere near the outlet mall, not even close. Instead, it had driven 168 miles in one direction, stopped for 6 hours, then driven 172 miles back, 340 miles total. My fingers went cold as I zoomed in on the destination. It took me less than 3 minutes to recognize the location, because I had heard about it before, more than once. Lena's lake house, his ex-girlfriend's family property, the one he used to talk about early in our relationship. The dock, the fire pit, the view of the water at sunset. He had driven my car nearly 170 miles to spend 6 hours at his ex's lake house. And then he crashed it on the way back. I sat there, staring at the screen, not crying, not yelling, just absorbing it. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet, calculated, wrapped in a lie so casual he thought I'd never question it. And the worst part? The heart emoji. The don't be mad. The way he believed I'd just accept it. I closed the app slowly, set my phone down, and leaned back against the couch. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about finding out how deep the lie really went, and how far he thought he could go, without me ever noticing. Monday morning, I filed the insurance claim using the story Ryan had given me. Dear
guardrail. Highway near the outlet mall.
Even as I repeated it, the words tasted wrong. Not because I believed him, but because some part of me still hadn't fully caught up to the truth. There's a strange delay that happens when betrayal lands. Your mind understands before your heart does. Your mouth keeps moving through old habits, while the rest of you is still standing in the wreckage. I told myself I needed time. I told myself I'd deal with him after I knew exactly what I was dealing with. I told myself a lot of things that morning. By Tuesday, there was no room left for any of them. The insurance investigator called just after noon. His voice was calm, professional, the kind of voice that had probably heard every version of human dishonesty and learned not to react to any of it. At first, the questions were simple. What time did the accident happen? Who was driving? What had I been told about the circumstances? I answered carefully, keeping my tone neutral, saying Ryan could provide more detailed information since he had been behind the wheel. There was a brief pause. Then he asked, "Does your vehicle have any telematics or GPS tracking installed?" I looked out the window at the empty parking space where my car should have been. "Yes," I said. "It has an OBD tracker." Another pause. Different this time. More attentive. "Would you be willing to share the location data from the day of the accident?" And just like that, the moment I'd been circling finally arrived. A clean, cold fork in the road. I could protect Ryan. Back his story. Pretend I had never opened the app, never zoomed in on those coordinates, never felt my stomach turn when I recognized Lena's lake house. Or I could tell the truth. Not the emotional truth. Not the part about the humiliation of realizing the man I loved had borrowed my car to drive to another woman. Just the factual truth. The route didn't match the story. That was all. That should have been simple. But my hand was shaking. Because loyalty doesn't die instantly, even when it should, even when it deserves to. It twitches. It gasps. It tries one last time to convince you that protecting someone who hurt you is the same thing as being kind. I stared at the floor for a second. Then I said, "I should probably tell you the GPS data doesn't match what my boyfriend told me." The investigator went very quiet. "Then, can you elaborate?" "He said he was running errands near the outlet mall," I said. "The car went over 300 miles round trip to a different location entirely." His voice stayed measured. "Would you be able to send that data to us?" "Yes." I hung up and sat very still. I wish I could tell you it felt empowering, clean, immediate. It didn't. It felt like cutting the last thread holding up something that had already collapsed. I emailed the GPS logs within the hour. Then I waited. Ryan called that night. Not with his usual easy voice. Not casual, not charming, not soft. Panicked. The second I answered, he said, "Why is the insurance investigator asking me about GPS tracking?" I stood in my kitchen, one hand pressed flat against the counter, because I told him the truth. Silence. A long, heavy, almost disbelieving silence. Then, "What truth?" I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because sometimes the truth is so insulting it leaves you with only two choices: scream or laugh. "The truth that my car drove 340 miles to Lena's lake house," I said. "The truth that you didn't go anywhere near the outlet mall. The truth that you lied to me, and then lied to the insurance company." His breathing changed. I could hear it. "You had GPS tracking on the car?" "Yeah, Ryan." Another silence. This one thinner, more dangerous. "I was going to tell you." That one actually hurt. Not because I believed it. Because he said it like I was supposed to be comforted by it. Tell me what? I asked quietly. That you borrowed my car to drive to your ex-girlfriend's lake house? Or that you crashed it after spending 6 hours there? Or that you came into my apartment, drank my coffee, looked me in the face, and fed me a story about a deer? It's not what it looks like. I closed my eyes. Of course it wasn't. It never is. What does it look like, Ryan? I just needed closure. There it was. That absurd little word, polished and packaged like it explained everything.
Closure.
As if betrayal becomes noble when you put therapeutic language around it. We talked, he rushed on. That's all. Nothing happened. I swear, Sam. Nothing physical happened. I let the silence stretch until he had to sit in it with me. Then I said, "You know what's interesting?" He didn't answer. The part that hurts the most isn't even whether you slept with her. His breath caught. It's how easy this was for you. How casually you borrowed my car. How casually you disappeared for 12 hours. How casually you sent me a heart emoji after wrecking something that mattered to me. You didn't just lie, Ryan. You moved through this whole thing like I was too stupid to ever find out. That's not fair. I almost admired the reflex. The instinct to reach for unfairness when accountability showed up. What's unfair, I said, my voice sharper now, is me sitting here with a denied claim hanging over my head because you wanted to go play unresolved feelings at your ex-girlfriend's lake house in my Honda. I panicked. Yes. I didn't know what to do. You could have told the truth. I didn't want to lose you. The words landed wrong. Hollow. Too late. Because that was the problem, wasn't it? He hadn't been afraid of hurting me. He'd been afraid of consequences. I leaned against the counter and stared at the dark reflection in the window. "We're done," I said. He went quiet again, but this time I could feel the shift, the panic sharpening into desperation. "Sam, don't do that." "I'm doing it." "Please, I'm sorry. I messed up, okay? I know I messed up. I was confused." "You were deliberate." "No." "You planned a 300-mile trip to see your ex. You stayed there for 6 hours. You lied about it. You lied again after the crash. You lied to my insurance company. That's not confusion. That's a series of decisions." He started crying then. Actual crying. For a second, that old reflex in me rose again. The one that used to soften whenever he sounded broken. The one that wanted to help, to calm, to fix. But all I could think was how many versions of me he had already relied on. The trusting one. The patient one. The forgiving one. The one who kept saying yes. Not this one. Not anymore. "You need to figure out how you're handling the insurance situation," I said. "Because I'm not lying for you." Then I hung up. Blocked his number. And stood there, in the silence afterward, shaking so hard I had to sit down on the kitchen floor. No dramatic music. No perfect speech echoing in my head. Just grief. And anger. And the ugly, humiliating ache of finally seeing someone clearly. Thursday, the denial letter came. Material misrepresentation of facts by the authorized driver. That was the phrase. So clean, so official, so brutally simple. In plain English, Ryan lied, and now the claim was denied. My car was still sitting in a tow yard collecting storage fees by the day. The repair estimate came in at $11,400. The pre-accident value of the car was around $19,000, maybe a little under. Not technically totaled, but close enough to make every option feel terrible. Repair it myself. Sell it damaged.
Absorb the loss.
I stared at the estimate for a long time, then called a lawyer a friend recommended. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted reality explained to me by someone who wasn't emotionally tangled in it. He laid out my options calmly. Small claims court for up to $10,000 in my state. Civil court for the full amount. Potential fraud reporting, though that part was already out of my hands once the insurer flagged the claim. He recommended starting with small claims. Faster. Cheaper. Cleaner. So I did. Friday afternoon, I filed. $9,500. Repairs, tow fees, the deductible, everything I could reasonably document. When I submitted the paperwork, my hands didn't shake this time. By Monday, Ryan had been served. And Monday evening, he showed up at my apartment. Not calling from a blocked number. Not texting from a friend's phone. Actually, standing outside my door with the court papers in his hand and rain on his jacket like the weather had volunteered for symbolism. His eyes were red. His face was pale. For one strange second, seeing him there made the last 2 years flicker through me so fast, it almost hurt physically. Movie nights, grocery runs, his laugh from the passenger seat of my car. The version of us that had once felt ordinary and safe. Then I looked at the papers in his hand, and the feeling passed. "You're suing me?" he asked the second I opened the door. His voice cracked on the word. "Are you serious right now?" "Yes." "Sam, come on." "No." He stared at me like he genuinely believed disbelief itself could undo legal documents. "You're taking me to court over an accident?" I folded my arms. "No, I'm taking you to court because you borrowed my car, drove it to your ex-girlfriend's lake house, crashed it on the way back, lied to me about it, lied to the insurance company, and left me with the bill." His mouth tightened. Nothing happened with her. I just looked at him. He took a step closer. "I told you, I needed closure. And I need my car fixed." That's cold. That one almost made me smile. Cold. After everything, he still wanted the moral high ground. I'm not the one who disappeared for 12 hours in somebody else's car. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated now. "I can't afford $9,500. "Then you should have thought about that before taking a 340-mile road trip in a vehicle you don't own." He looked away. And that was when I knew something else had shifted in me, too. Not just the love. The fear. It was gone. Not all the hurt. Not all the grief. But the fear of him calling me cruel, of him thinking badly of me, of being cast as the unreasonable one. Gone. He tried a different tone then. Softer. Familiar. "Can't we work something out privately? You can send a settlement offer in writing." His face changed. He had expected softness at that point. A crack. A memory. Some old tenderness he could use as a door back in. There wasn't one. He left crying. 2 days later, his mother texted me from an unknown number. I understood almost immediately who it was because the message had that same polished entitlement some families confuse with righteousness. "I know you're upset, but taking my son to court is excessive. He made a mistake. Young people make mistakes. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him?" I read it twice. Then I typed back, "Ma'am, your son borrowed my car, drove it to his ex-girlfriend's house, crashed it, lied about where he was, and lied to my insurance company. That isn't one mistake. That's a chain of choices. I want my property paid for." Her reply came fast. "This isn't about the car. You're punishing him because he hurt your feelings." I stared at that line until I started laughing again, that dry, hollow laugh that had become weirdly familiar this week. "My feelings are free," I typed. "My car is not." She called me vindictive,
Heartless.
said I'd regret ruining a good man's future over one bad decision. I blocked the number. By Thursday, the insurance investigator called again. They had referred the matter to their special investigations unit for potential fraud. He couldn't give me details, but he said I might be contacted later if they moved forward. After I hung up, I sat at my desk and looked around my apartment. Ryan's hoodie was still hanging over one of my chairs. A coffee mug he liked was still in my drying rack. A charger he'd left here months ago was still plugged into the wall beside my couch. Small, ordinary things. Evidence of a life that had felt shared until it suddenly didn't. I got up, gathered all of it into a box, and shoved it into the hall closet without opening the door again. Not because I was healed. Not because I was over it. But because something in me had finally stopped waiting for him to become someone else. The court date was set. The repair bills were real. And whatever happened next was going to happen in the full light of the truth. The court date didn't feel real until I was sitting in the room. It wasn't anything like TV. No dramatic lighting, no raised voices echoing through a packed gallery. No lawyers pacing back and forth like they were performing for an audience. Just a small room. A judge behind a desk. A few chairs. And two people sitting on opposite sides of a story that had already ended, now being reduced to facts, numbers, and consequences. I arrived early. Of course I did. I always do when something matters. I had a folder in my hands, organized, labeled, precise. GPS logs, printed and highlighted. Repair estimates from 2 different shops. Screenshots of Ryan's text. I crashed your car. Don't be mad. These things happen. The insurance denial letter. Receipts from the tow yard. A written timeline I'd gone over so many times I could recite it without looking.
Control.
That's what it gave me. Not power. Just control. Ryan arrived 5 minutes before the hearing. With his mother. I knew it was her immediately. The same tight expression, the same energy that felt less like concern and more like accusation wrapped in politeness. He looked different. Not physically, but smaller. Like something had finally caught up to him. For a brief moment, our eyes met. There was something there. Regret, maybe. Or fear. Or just the realization that this wasn't something he could talk his way out of. I looked away first. Not out of weakness. Out of finality. When our case was called, we stepped forward. The judge was calm, direct, the kind of person who had seen every variation of this situation before, and wasn't interested in anything except the truth. Ms. Hayes, he said, glancing at the paperwork, you're seeking $9,500 in damages. Please explain your claim. My voice didn't shake. Not even a little. He borrowed my car with permission, I said. He crashed it. The insurance claim was denied because he provided false information about where the accident occurred. I'm seeking reimbursement for repair costs and related fees. Simple. Clean. No emotion. Because emotion doesn't win cases. Facts do. The judge nodded, then turned to Ryan. Your response? Ryan shifted beside his mother. It was an accident, he said. A deer ran out. I swerved. I didn't mean to crash. The judge didn't react. No one is disputing that an accident occurred, he said evenly. The issue is liability. I've reviewed the plaintiff's documentation. The GPS data indicates the vehicle was approximately 170 miles from the location reported to the insurance company. Can you explain that discrepancy? Ryan hesitated. For the first time since I'd known him, he didn't have a quick answer. His mother leaned slightly toward him, like she could somehow pass him a response through proximity. "The GPS must be wrong," he said finally. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. "Your Honor," I said, "I can demonstrate how the device works and verify its accuracy." The judge shook his head. "That won't be necessary." He looked back at Ryan. "Is there any legitimate reason the GPS would show the vehicle in a different location than what was reported?" Ryan's silence stretched, long enough to become an answer on its own. Finally, he said, "I might have gone somewhere else earlier." "Might have?" the judge repeated. His tone didn't change, but the air in the room did. Ryan swallowed. "Yes." "And did you report that to the insurance company?" "No." "Instead, you stated the accident occurred near an outlet mall." "Yes." "And that statement was not accurate." Ryan's voice dropped. "No." There it was. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just the truth, finally said out loud. His mother stood up suddenly. "Your Honor, my son is a good man." "Ma'am," the judge said calmly, without looking at her, "please sit down. You are not a party to this case." She hesitated, clearly not used to being dismissed, then slowly sat back down, her expression tightening. The judge turned back to Ryan. "Were you the driver of the vehicle at the time of the accident?" "Yes." "Was the vehicle borrowed with permission?" "Yes." "And do you acknowledge that your misrepresentation to the insurance company resulted in the denial of the claim that would have otherwise covered these damages?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. I watched him. Not with anger. Not even with satisfaction. Just clarity. This was the moment everything he had tried to avoid finally landed in one place. His choices. His consequences. "No," the judge said quietly. "That wasn't a rhetorical question." Ryan exhaled. "Yes." The judge reviewed the documents in front of him one more time. The room was completely silent. Even his mother didn't speak. Then he set the papers down. "Based on the evidence presented," he said, "I find in favor of the plaintiff. Full amount, $9,500. The words were simple, but they landed heavy. Ryan didn't react right away. It was like his brain needed a second to catch up. His mother, however, reacted instantly. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, standing again. "You're ruining his life over a car." "Ma'am," the judge said sharply this time, "one more outburst and you will be removed from the courtroom." She opened her mouth again. The bailiff stepped forward. That was enough. She sat down, furious. Ryan just stared at the desk. Not arguing. Not protesting. Just staring. It was over. Just like that. No dramatic speech. No final confrontation. Just a decision. And the quiet weight of it settling into reality. Outside the courtroom, the hallway felt strangely brighter. Like stepping out of something heavy into air that hadn't been there before. I was halfway to the exit when I heard my name. "Sam." I stopped. Turned. Ryan was standing a few feet behind me. Alone this time. His mother was nowhere in sight. "I hope you're happy," he said. There was no anger in his voice. Just something bitter. Hollow. I studied him for a second, then shook my head. "I'm not happy." He frowned slightly, like that wasn't the answer he expected. "I'm just less screwed than I was before," I added. That landed. "You know I can't afford that," he said. Then you should have thought about that before you crashed a car you couldn't afford to replace. He flinched. This is because I went to see her, isn't it? He said suddenly. You're punishing me because you're jealous. There it was. One last attempt to rewrite the story. To make this about emotion instead of accountability. I took a slow breath. This isn't about Lena, I said. This is about you taking my property, damaging it, lying about it, and causing financial consequences I had to deal with. That's not fair. It's accurate. He shook his head, frustrated now. I told you nothing happened. I don't care. The words came out easier than I expected. Cleaner. I don't care if you held hands, talked, cried, or sat in silence for 6 hours, I continued. You lied. Repeatedly. That's the part that matters. He looked at me like he was searching for something. Some version of me that would still bend, still soften, still meet him halfway. She wasn't there anymore. Pay the judgment, I said. Or don't. That's between you and the court now. I turned and walked away. He said something behind me, something about regret, about karma, about how I'd understand one day. I didn't turn around, because for the first time in a long time, I didn't need the last word. That night, I went back to my apartment. It felt different. Quieter. Not empty. Just mine. I sat on the couch, staring at the space where his things used to be. And for a moment, the silence pressed in again. The memories. The version of us that had once felt real. The version of him I had believed in. Grief doesn't disappear just because justice shows up. It lingers. It echoes. But underneath it, there was something else now. Something steadier. Something stronger.
Clarity.
The case was over. But the consequences? They were just getting started. 16 days after the court date, my life finally started to feel quiet again. Not empty. Not lonely. Just quiet in a way that didn't feel like something was about to go wrong. And after everything that had happened, that kind of quiet felt earned. Ryan didn't pay. Of course he didn't. Part of me had expected it. Not out of bitterness, just realism. Someone who could lie that easily, who could convince himself things would work out without consequences, wasn't suddenly going to become responsible because a judge told him to. So when the 30-day deadline passed, I filed for wage garnishment. The process was cold, administrative, clinical. Forms. Signatures. Verification of employment. And then, just like that, his employer was ordered to redirect 25% of his disposable income to me until the judgment, now closer to $9,850 with fees and interest, was paid in full. Based on what I knew about his salary, it would take him over a year. 14 to 16 months. Every paycheck. A reminder. I won't pretend that didn't give me a certain sense of closure. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just balance. The insurance situation escalated too. About 2 weeks after the hearing, I received a letter from the insurance company's legal department. They had completed their investigation and referred the case to the state insurance commissioner for potential prosecution. I read that line 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, because I did. Too well. Insurance fraud isn't a small thing. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a felony. And while I hadn't reported him directly, I had told the truth when asked. That was enough. For a while, I just sat at my kitchen table, staring at the letter. trying to figure out how I felt. Because it wasn't simple. Part of me thought, he made his choices, he can live with them. Another part of me thought, a felony record? For this? But then I remembered the chain. The drive. The lies. The text with the heart emoji. The calm, practice story over coffee. And I realized something uncomfortable but necessary. None of this started with the insurance company. It started with him deciding that the truth was optional. His mother tried one last time. A message from a new number. Long.
Emotional. Accusatory.
She said I had destroyed her son's future. That I had turned a mistake into a catastrophe. That they were considering legal action against me for emotional distress and malicious intent. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to the same lawyer I had consulted earlier. He called me 10 minutes later, laughing. "Sam, they don't have a case," he said. "You didn't lie. You didn't manipulate anything. You were the one who got your property damaged. If they want to waste money trying to sue you, that's their decision." That was the end of that. I blocked the number. Again. And then, something unexpected happened. About a week later, I got a message on Instagram from someone I didn't recognize. The username was unfamiliar, but the tone wasn't.
Direct.
A little hesitant. "Hey, I think we need to talk. This is Lena." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Ryan's ex-girlfriend. The lake house. The 6-hour stop. The missing piece of a story I already understood, but hadn't fully seen from the other side. I considered ignoring it. Closing the app. Letting the past stay where it belonged. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. So I replied, "Okay." Her response came almost immediately. She explained everything. Ryan had been reaching out to her for months. Not constantly, but consistently. Checking in. Finding reasons to talk. Testing the door to see if it would open again. She said she had kept things polite but distant. Because she had a new boyfriend. Because she didn't want drama. Because she thought Ryan would eventually stop. He didn't. The day of the crash, he hadn't told her he was coming. He just showed up.
Unannounced.
With my car. With his unresolved feelings wrapped in a story about being in the area. They talked. For hours. She told me nothing physical happened. That he tried to bring up the past. That she shut it down. That he left upset. And then, somewhere on the drive back, he crashed. "I'm sorry about your car," she wrote. "Honestly. But I'm kind of relieved everything came out. I didn't know how to handle him without causing exactly this kind of situation." I leaned back against my couch, phone still in my hand. Not surprised. Not shocked. Just confirmed. The closure story? Another lie. Not even a good one. Just something he thought would sound better than the truth. I typed back. "Thanks for telling me. I wish I had known sooner. But I understand why you didn't say anything." She replied with a simple, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And that was it. No drama. No confrontation. Just clarity. A few days later, I got my car back.
Repaired.
Restored. You wouldn't know it had ever been in an accident. When I sat behind the wheel again, I had to take a second before starting the engine. Because it felt like more than just getting a car back. It felt like reclaiming something. Not just the money. Not just the damage. Something else. Something quieter.
Ownership.
Of my choices. Of my boundaries. Of my life. I installed a dash cam the next day. Not out of paranoia, out of practicality. Because if this whole experience taught me anything, it's that evidence matters more than assumptions. I'm not dating. Not right now. Not because I'm broken. Not because I'm bitter. Because I'm recalibrating. Trust isn't something you just switch back on. It's something you rebuild.
Carefully. Intentionally.
And honestly, I don't mind the space. My apartment feels different now. Cleaner.
Calmer.
It doesn't carry someone else's chaos in it anymore. I cook more. Read more. Sleep better. I started watching documentaries Ryan used to call too depressing. Turns out, they're just real. And I think I needed real. Every 2 weeks, the garnishment hits my account. A quiet deposit. A quiet reminder. Not of him, but of the line I finally drew. The investigation is still ongoing. I don't know what will happen. Maybe charges. Maybe not. That part isn't mine to control. And for once, I'm okay with that. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this. The truth doesn't ruin lives. It reveals them. Ryan didn't lose everything because I told the truth. He lost everything because of what he did before the truth showed up. My car is parked outside right now. Clean. Whole. Mine. And for the first time in a long time, so is my life.